Testing, testing. Okay, I think we have sound now. Man, I said all that and there was no sound. Well, I appreciate you, brother, for letting me know. All right. Well, I'm going to have to start all over again. Let me know if you can hear me. Give me some likes, some love, some hearts, some something, some angry faces. I don't care what it is. All engagement and boost my ratings. So go ahead and give me whatever it is. Let me know you can hear me. All right. Or drop it in the chat. All right. Oh, goodness. Okay. All right. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yeah. I don't know. I just finished having a wonderful class with WOVI, Women of Vision, and is it intention or inspiration? Whatever that stands for. They were an amazing group of women, and I am so honored to have been able to spend some time with them. Okay, so I think you all can hear me now. So I'm going to try to remember what I said in the beginning. Oh, okay. I really want to know why my sound stopped. I just got off of one Zoom and I went right into StreamYard. The video worked fine. I don't know why the sound didn't work fine. Okay, anyway, let me stop wasting time with that. Starting over. Tonight is Fireside Chat. I want to welcome you to Fireside Chat. This is my opportunity to answer your money questions with style and grace. Now, before I get to your money questions, because we do take these money questions and extrapolate them for the podcast, I do want to make sure I show you how to ask a question. Okay. So if you are live, you can drop your question in the comments, or you can, if you want to be anonymous, you can go to askjjc.com. When you go to askjjc.com to answer your question, to ask your question, let me pull up the slide here. Share screen. Okay, window. There we go. So when you go to askjjc.com, you should get a screen, a Google form that looks like this. You can also find this Google form if you click the Ask JJ button on Building Wealth Together. In fact, I probably should have started there. All right, so this is my website, Building Wealth Together. And if you go in the corner, or you can, what? Oops. Wrong one. Ooh, that's a little bit embarrassing. Okay. Whoopsie. I can read. Reading comprehension is a thing. Okay, this one right here used to be green. I don't know why we changed that. This one right here says Ask JJ. Let me start over a third time, y'all. I'm so sorry. All right, so if you go to my website, you can see the button there that says Ask JJ. And that takes you to the same Google form as typing in askjjc.com. Okay, so askjjc.com or the Ask JJ button from Building Wealth Together, they both take you to the same place. It's this screen right here. And on this screen right here, you will be able to see how you can ask a question. Now, if you are live today and you're not listening to this as part of the podcast, then I encourage you to drop your question in the comments, because that's going to be the fastest way for me to see it. However, sometimes we don't want our name attached to our question. So you can fill out this form. This form will be anonymous. Now, if you are listening to this after the fact, or if you think of a question after we're done, you can also call 1-833, the number 4, Ask JJC, ASK JJC. Now, what that does is it's a voicemail line. You ask your question as a voicemail, and then later on, I'll put it into the podcast when I answer it. Okay. So those are different ways that you can get your question answered. Right. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to switch. I'm going to switch to some questions that have been sent in, and we are going to start answering some questions today. Now, we do take these questions and we export them to the podcast. So if you are listening to this on the podcast, then I want to encourage you to watch live every Thursday night, 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. Now, every first Thursday is Fireside Chat. That's Q&A. Sometimes I have a little teaching, but for the most part, it's Q&A. Every second Thursday is our 7-figure business building, where we teach each other multiple streams of income. Sometimes I bring in a guest, sometimes I speak on it myself, multiple streams of income so we can secure our family's financial future. Every third Thursday is Real Estate Investing 101, and through the course of the year, we'll cover 20 different ways you can invest in real estate even if you don't buy the house. Our fourth Thursday is the Empowered Entrepreneur, and this is where we learn to elevate our character, our values, our beliefs, so that we can walk into becoming who we want to be so that we can achieve the things we want to achieve. A lot of times people ask me, what do I have to do to build wealth? It's not about what you have to do. There are mechanics to what you have to do, but it's really about who you have to be to walk in abundance and attract wealth. All right. So I'm excited about these every fourth Thursday. We have had a wonderful time last year with that new format. It worked well, and I'm a big fan. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we keeping it the same this year. We'll have a few different lessons, but for the most part, it's the same format. Once the lesson is done, you can come on and ask any financial question you want. Now, I prefer lessons. I prefer, let me say that again. Now, I prefer that the questions match the lesson. That's ideal, right? But if you got a question about entrepreneurship and it's the first Thursday, don't wait till the fourth Thursday. Get your question answered. That's what I'm here for. All right. And so before I start answering the questions, there's one more thing I want to say. And I want to say this very clearly, and I'm probably going to repeat it on all the podcasts that we use, that we create from each of the questions. So we do these questions on every first Thursday. We extract them out for the podcast, but I'm probably going to drop this piece into all of them. The reason that I continue to teach these Thursday night classes is because as I elevate and as my time becomes more expensive and less available, I never, ever, ever want to forget where I came from when I was over $800,000 in debt, reeling from a painful divorce, trying to figure out how to put together the pieces of my life. And not only were there no programs to help someone like me learn how to make big money fast and ethically, but there was also no kinds of social programs to help someone like me, because even though I was in this crazy situation, I made 6 figures. So I made 6 figures. And so there were no programs that I qualified for to help me. And so, a lot of times when I'm speaking, people say, "Wow, I really thank you for sharing this information. I wish I would have had this when I was younger." Well, when I was younger, y'all, I'm a lot older than I look, but when I was younger, this information didn't exist. And where it did exist, it was not accessible, friendly, or convenient for women. It was always one of these things that you had to be part of a good old boys club. Somebody else said it. I like the way they said it. They said stale, pale, and male. And that's something I am definitely not. And that's why I am so passionate about keeping pathways. So you don't have to worry today, no matter how far I get up the food chain, y'all, there will always be a pathway for you to ask your questions when you are somebody like me who's $800,000 in debt. You $800,000 in debt today. I don't want you to step out on faith and sow your $1,000 seed on a credit card. I want you to get out of debt. And if that means going to a free class and asking your free question at askjjc.com, then you do that and you rinse and repeat until you have enough money to hire a financial coach for yourself. I'm not going to sit here and tell you go into debt to pay me. I mean, if you're going to go into debt to buy a TV, I'd rather you pay me to be your financial coach or to be your financial planner. I mean, let's just say it like that, right? But if you're struggling to put food on the table and somebody is telling you, "Oh, y'all, I didn't plan on saying this today. Nobody asked me no question about this today. I don't know who needs to hear this today, but somebody needs to hear this today." If you are struggling to put food on the table, and you're not spending your money on cable, and you're going to, like I used to, you're sitting behind Panera Bread or behind Starbucks or behind Whataburger to use their free internet because you can't even afford the internet, and you're doing all you can shopping at the thrift store for your babies, and you're doing all you can to make it day in and day out. You better not let somebody come in and tell you that you need to give them your $1,000, your $2,000, that you need to put it on a card, that you need to borrow, scrape, or steal from somebody else to try and pay them this money so that you can show that you're investing in yourself, that you're going to take a bet on yourself, that you believe in yourself, that you have faith in God. I mean, let's just fill in the blank with all the things that people have used to convince us to pay money we don't have so that they can line their pockets. Now, am I saying that all them programs aren't any good? Let me try to use some proper English. Am I saying that those programs aren't any good? I am sure there are some of those programs that do good for some people. But if you don't have it, then you don't have it. Now, if you don't have it because you're going out to McDonald's every day, then we can work on that. And I can free up that McDonald's money for you. And I can have you making a homemade burger that tastes so good and takes just as much time as sitting in that drive-through at McDonald's. All right. And then that'll free up some money. But if you're scrimping and saving, man, I remember the days of scrimping and saving. I remember the days sitting outside any place that had free Wi-Fi. And when Kid City opened up a Shreveport Community Church, I spent many an afternoon letting my son play in that playscape simply because they had free Wi-Fi. And every so often, somebody behind the counter would have mercy on me, and they'd bring me a hot cocoa, or they'd bring me a cookie, or they'd bring me a Danish, and I would share it with my son. I'm never going to forget those days. And if somebody had come along and tried to tell me that the reason I was where I was is because I didn't believe enough in myself to slap $5,000 on a credit card so they could get rich and try to teach me something, well, I would have said they were crazy. You know why? Because that wasn't the reason I was in the situation I was in. Now, if you're not going to pay to get the next class, if you're not going to pay to take your business to the next level, but you're going to go out and buy I saw a TV. My goodness, we were in a thing. That TV, it was a gaming screen. It was a TV that was bigger than the wall in my room, and it wasn't a projector screen. It was a TV screen, and then they had monitors that are bigger than my desk. Now I want one of them, but I'm telling you, if you're buying all that stuff, that's a different situation. You need to learn how to give up some of that stuff to get what you want out of life. You have to decide not a sacrifice, but a letting go of something of lesser value so you can reach for something of greater value. All right. But if you are scrimping and saving today and people are making you feel that life is passing you by, I want to encourage you today. You follow these sound financial principles that I have been teaching. You get yourself out of debt. You build yourself a savings account. So while you're getting out of debt, all the little things that go wrong in life don't derail you. You build your savings, you get out of debt, you invest your money, and you do it the way that I'm teaching you, you are going to win 100% of the time. And it's not going to take long. It's not going to take years. It's not going to take till you're old and gray and have no strength left. Now, if you're already old and gray, okay, look, you know what I'm saying, right? But look, I want you to be encouraged today. This way that I teach does not take very long. I came home from that military trip to that divorce, that devastating divorce, and all that debt in 2009. And when I retired from the Air Force in 2020, I was debt free. The only thing that I still had on the books was that one house that was 220 upside down. And we're in the process of trying to sell that to the to the renters. All right? So I want you to be encouraged that you can win with money. You know, my son asked me a question the other day. He wanted to play jobs. And so I don't know how he came up with this, but we were in the Marriott Hotel one time, the Marriott Courtyard in Arlington, and we were staying there. We've been there a couple times now. We were staying there, and for some reason, he came up with this job because he called one of their little seating areas his office. And he asked me, he said, "Mom, let's go play jobs. Do you remember what a job is?" And I said, "Well, hon, it's been a couple years since I had one, but yes, I remember what a job is." Look, I called myself substitute teaching, and then I told somebody I was going to come back. I was going to come back and substitute for a class of special needs kids. And I was like, "Yeah, I'll go and volunteer." And they kind of looked at me funny. And I realized that to them, I'm making money. I'm making like $40 a day. Well, let me tell you something, honey. My time is worth a lot more than minimum wage. So for me to go spend a day in that classroom, for me, that is the equivalent of volunteering. Okay. Don't get me wrong. I want my paycheck. You said you're gonna pay me, I want to pay you. And I gotta give a shout out to the school district because they realized they didn't code the position right. And so they ended up paying me more after the fact. I appreciated that. I really did. I really like the school district where I'm living. But I'm gonna tell you something. Don't let people scam you. And it doesn't mean that what they're selling isn't good, because most of us teach the same stuff. I mean, if we'll just be real about it, most of us teach the same stuff. We just teach it in a way that's different for different personalities. And what people who are drawn to me usually aren't drawn to that person, or they're not drawn to that person, but they're drawn to me. So the people who are drawn to me come to me. They pay me to teach them the same stuff that the people drawn to them do. But if you don't have it, you don't have it. And if you got to put it on a credit card, you don't have it. If you got to put your niece's glasses on a credit card, you don't have it. Tell your brother, tell your sister, find another way. You don't have it if they want to do an offering and you're putting it on a credit card. You're pulling out the credit card with the ATM. I don't know who's doing this, but somebody listening to me right now is pulling out money on their ATM, using the ATM with their credit card to pull out cash to put in the offering because they too embarrassed to admit they're broke. And I'm telling you right now, the only way you're going to get to where you want to go is if you will acknowledge that this is where I am right now. That's where I want to go. And here's the steps I have to take. But if you hide from the problem, cover it up with credit card and credit card and credit card, we get all sophisticated and call ourselves playing credit card arbitrage. You know, that just sounds so sophisticated and grown, doesn't it? Oh, honey, you need to know that it is time to get your money act together and stop letting these people scam you. You keep buying into class after class after class after class. And do I want you to buy my classes? Of course I want you to buy my classes. But if you can't afford my class, get on an affiliate program, tell your friends about the class, earn the money to go in the class. Don't go into debt to buy my class. Now you're going to go into debt to buy somebody else's class, then go ahead and go into debt to buy my class. But I want you to go into debt to buy anybody's class. Do y'all feel me today? Do y'all understand what I am saying? All right. So now let's go ahead and get to the questions. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast and you're like, wow, she just spent 20 minutes or however long that was with no questions. Well, we're going to ask her a couple questions and then we'll save the rest of them for next week. All right. Question number 1. I really need to pay down $15,000 in credit card debt, $30,000 in student loan debt, and a $60,000 on a home mortgage. I have several investments and want to know if I should cash out to pay off my debt. All right. So there's a little bit more information here, but I'm going to stop there with that question. It's for the general population. I really need to know all the details. Okay. So this person did provide me a few extra details about their personal life, which I kind of feel like if I share this and that is going to, it's going to reveal who they are. But the thing is they didn't provide me information that I need as a financial planner to really give good recommendation. And so please keep in mind that all of the information that is broadcast through this Thursday night program on the Building Wealth Together podcast or anything else I do that's public, if you are not my financial client, I am not giving you personal financial advice. I do strive to be accurate in what I provide, but I can't account for changes in the market, changes in policy, and other things that happen overnight. I also cannot guarantee that everything I say, even though it might work for this client, is going to work for you. You got to apply things with your own financial, legal, medical, fill in the blank counsel to make sure that what I'm saying applies to you. Ooh, yeah, I got to start saying that more often. Okay, but in this situation, what they did not provide me is their income. So there's a whole lot of difference between saying, I got this $105,000 of debt that I want to pay off, and I only make $36,000 a year, versus I got this $105,000 of debt to pay off, and I make $205,000 a year. See, one of them has a bigger shovel. If the amount of debt you have is about a third to a half of what you make, and you make enough above the poverty line that you can cut what your lifestyle in half, then that's what I'm going to recommend you do. And when it comes to liquidating investment accounts, it's really going to depend on your situation. For the most part, generally speaking, if you have access to funds that is not going to cause you penalty, because they didn't say whether or not these are retirement accounts, or they didn't say how old they are. They didn't say how long they've had them. I mean, like, all of that makes a difference. Okay. But if you have money that's been in the market for a long time and you don't have any penalties for pulling it out, and you get to pull it out at the long-term capital gains, that's probably the best tax treatment you're going to have. I'm not a CPA, y'all. I took a semester of taxes for financial planning classes, but I do not like taxes. That's why I have the most amazing CPA on the planet. Her name is Ibera Koya. She is the wealth building CPA. You can ask her to analyze your situation, and she will let you know what kind of tax treatment you're going to have. But if all those things line up and you've got the most favorable tax treatment, well, then to me, the best thing for you to do is to take that money, get rid of that debt, especially if you're taking out 24%, 36%. Y'all, who was it that I had a couple years ago? I had somebody a couple years ago with over 40% interest on a student loan. And the worst part about it is they went to school for law. And then they went into social work, and they went to school for law because they wanted to use their law degree to change communities. But then they realized all these things that come with becoming a lawyer, and they realized their heart was, I want to serve the community, and serve the community jobs don't pay law school money. So I felt so bad for that person, because that's a really big hole to fill. And she trying to fill it with a real small shovel. Okay, so that's going to depend on this. Now, when would I not tell you to liquidate an investment? Because for the most part, I'm going to tell you liquidate the investment, start over, get rid of the debt, start over. Start off by getting yourself a nice padding of an emergency fund to handle any of the ups and downs of life. So if you live in an area where nothing's really expensive, maybe that's $1,000. If you live in DC, or if you live in Dallas, or if you live in San Francisco, maybe that's $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, right? But minimum $1,000. Okay. Get a savings account, throw the rest of it at debt, and churn out those debt payments so that you can get free of that bondage. But when would I tell you not to? When would I tell you not to? The times that I would tell somebody not to liquidate their investment accounts is if those investment accounts are retirement accounts, and if there would be significant penalties for withdrawal. So, for example, I had somebody that was having a really tough time. They were going through a family transition. They had $300,000 in an IRA. And I felt so bad, because I know they thought I was full of it, and they never did come back and hire me as their financial planner. But I told them what I'm about to tell you. And that is, they wanted to take $3,000 out of that IRA. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Intellectually, it makes sense. I got $300,000 in an IRA. Let me just pull out enough to live on this month. Okay. The thing is, the reason that I told them not to do it was threefold. One, they were young enough that they were going to have a huge penalty for pulling out of their IRA. Two, because it was a traditional IRA. So I'm so sorry. I'm saying that incorrectly. I'm saying it was an IRA, but it was a 401k. So it was a traditional 401k. I'm so sorry. It was a traditional 401k through their previous job. They had become full-time investors, and now investing in real estate is a little rocky until you have enough properties that are paid off so that you get all that profit. Until you have enough properties that are paid off, it can be really rocky. That's why I don't teach people to go into debt to buy real estate. So I really felt for them. But the thing was, they had been with the employer, they stopped. So if they were to pull out this money, they were going to get hit because A, they were too young. B, they now had a tax hit because the money was tax deferred when it went in instead of going into their paycheck. And by time the dust settled, out of their $3,000, they were only going to get 60% of that. And so my thing is, if all you really need is $3,000, Between the two of yous, the husband and the wife, you should be able to go out and grind out a second job and leave your retirement account alone. And they thought I was ridiculous and they thought I didn't know what I was talking about, but I wasn't talking about just the money. If you're in that hard of a time, and you need to pull out 5,000 and end up with 3,000, 3,500, then okay, I get it. But if all you really needed was that little bit compared to the earning potential that you have, and the job that the one spouse already had, that it's not money that's the problem. And a lot of times we ask these questions about investing, and the money is not the problem. The interest rates are not the problem. It's not the problem that I'm telling you to pay off debt and pay off this and pay off that and don't buy a car with anything but cash. When you say, well, the interest rates are blah, 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 I could invest the money and make the spread. Honey, if you were going to invest the money and make the spread, you would have already been done, did it. And then you would have had plenty of money to go buy the car. Okay, so don't even come at me with that. But going back to that situation, to me, if you're just going to throw 40% of your money away, you might as well find another way. And that's really the biggest time I would tell somebody not to liquidate their investment accounts to pay off debt. If you have a long, like I shouldn't have done this the way it was done. Okay. I had an investment account from before I even married and met my husband, my ex-husband. When I was a cadet at the Air Force Academy, cadets, ROTC or academy, service academies, they get a stipend. And when I got there, I didn't have money for a computer. It was kind of a new thing. Like internet was brand new. Like it was Usenet back then. It wasn't even internet, y'all. So I remember when HTML came out and had one of the very first web host companies. I mean, I was all in that thing. But at this time, computers had been out for a little bit, but I didn't have, they were expensive and I didn't have money for my own. And so they took that out of my paycheck for the first 3 years or so. But I always knew that you were supposed to invest. So even though I only got paid $40 a month even though I only got paid $40 a month, I was still setting aside money to invest. And back then you had to do it in $100 chunks. And that's what I did. So when me and my ex-husband decided we were going to get out of debt and he had gotten into some money trouble, I liquidated that little $32,000 that I had saved up in my mid-20s and used it to pay off his problems. Now, I highly recommend using your investment account if you've held it for long enough to pay off your problems. Maybe not some smooth talking man's problems, but pay off your problems. Okay. But if you're going to take a huge tax hit, or if it's a retirement account where you're going to take not only a tax hit, but a huge penalty, then I wouldn't liquidate that. What's another example where I wouldn't say liquidate it? Let's say you received a large inheritance, like you received $500,000, $1 million, $2 million, and you put it into a brokerage account. And then now you want to go buy a house. And well, if you did that 6 months ago, you probably want to leave it in there for another 2 or 3 years and let it grow back. But let's just say it was a booming year. And I mean, the market's been skyrocketing and you're like, I need to pull this out because who knows what's going to happen next year. But you've only had it in there for a year. Well, you're going to have a much higher tax rate because you haven't had the money in the market long enough to get the long-term capital gains. And so, yeah, you would definitely want to sit down with a CPA to kind of evaluate that. But for the most part, yeah, I want you to liquidate what you have. And liquidate what you have, all except an emergency account. An emergency account that provides you padding so that every time something goes wrong, you don't go rush out and run up your credit card again, right? Yep. All right. So good question. Good question. Next question. And again, if you are listening live, feel free to put your comment, your question in the chat, or you can fill out the form at askjjc.com. It's going to take you to a Google form and it's totally anonymous unless you just want to give me your information. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at this question here. Okay, so we have a huge amount of debt for a family of 5, $35,000 credit card, 200,000 student loans, and the assets are 100,000 in 401k. They paid off their car, older car, minivan, Primary income is 95,000. Spouse stays at home taking care of youngest child and after school care. So I don't know if the after school care is for their kids or if they're providing after school care for others. But if they're providing it for others, that's an excellent way to bring in some extra income while still being a stay-at-home mom. And I'll tell you, I was a working mom. I was a working mom for many years. And one of my greatest joys right now is having the financial flexibility to be a stay-at-home mom with my boys. Although my husband might say I'm not home very much due to my speaking career, but I try to be home for the boys. I try to be home for his events. We fill the calendar out and I try to make sure I'm home for them. And it's a wonderful way. It's wonderful when you can find ways to make money that allow you to spend that time with your family. And so I'm always going to support the stay-at-home mom. I'm always going to support her with ways that she can stay at home. I'm not going to tell her just rush out and go get a job unless her kids are at school, in which case she might have that kind of time depending on the structure of their household and what she has to manage. A lot of people think stay-at-home moms aren't doing much, but they have a lot to manage. So, it's a lot of things that don't get done when you're a working mom, or they don't get done at a cost-effective rate. Okay. So I want to talk about that real quick. That's not what this question is answering, but I want to talk about that real quick. And then we'll come back and answer that question. And so a lot of times people think that, oh, well, I know I say this because I had this thought, right? I used to have these thoughts and I used to share these thoughts with other working moms. And then we used to kind of get a little pity party about how all the stay-at-home moms talk about how exhausted they are and how hard it is. And we're like in the military and we're single moms and we're doing all the things. And a lot of the spouses would, I shouldn't say it like that, but there was a little bit of animosity between female military members and spouses of military members, because a lot of us, I'll be honest, felt like y'all aren't halfway working as hard as we are. We're doing everything for our families, and you're taking your husband's paycheck and you're just kind of wearing his rank and you're just kind of griping about stuff that the rest of us have to do. But there's a lot of things that don't get done well, and they don't get done on a budget when you've got all these different factors and both partners in the home are working outside the home, especially when there's young children. I remember somebody who was one of my early financial clients. They had 4 children and a surprise baby come along like after, like 10 years later. It's kind of like me and Cubby. Surprise baby comes along 10 years later. And I'm like, look, when we calculate this out, you'd be spending as much in childcare as you would be making at the end of the day. We lived in the DC area. In order for them to have childcare, they were either going to have to leave their baby an hour and a half away, because that's how long the commute was. The husband and wife commuted in together every day. You were going to have to leave the baby there, and or you were going to have to put the baby where we were, which my childcare, y'all, was $2,600 a month. It was $450 a week. I can't even believe that now. Like that's more than our living expenses. I mean, I do have travel tastes, so we're not including the travel budget in that. But I paid more for daycare when Cubby was an infant than I paid than my family has in living expenses. So, I was like, none of these situations are really a good fit. All you're gonna do is break even. And you're going to be worn out. You're going to be unavailable to your husband, and you're going to make this child miserable. And so she made the decision to stay home. And I found out later that for her was the real best decision. And I gave her my perspective as a financial planner. There are a lot of other things that went into that perspective, not just the finances of it, but from the financial standpoint. Everybody always says, well, send your wife back to work, send your wife back to work. Well, you really got to analyze that, because sometimes it's not worth it. Not when your daycare is $2,600 a month. On a 5-week month, and what was it, $2,250 on a 4-week month? Whew, y'all, that was more than I paid for my house. All right. So going back to this question about what to prioritize on their debt, I'm always going to tell people to prioritize an emergency fund, so that you don't have to go back into debt when Murphy shows up, right? I'm going to always tell people to prioritize getting out of debt with smallest to highest. Dave Ramsey calls that the snowball method. I forget what Larry Burkett used to call it, but Larry Burkett would go back and forth. Sometimes he would talk about the lowest interest rate, and then sometimes he would talk about the lowest dollar amount, because the benefit of the lowest interest rate is math. But let's be real. If everybody cared about math, we wouldn't be in debt in the first place. All right. So mathematically, it might be better to pay off the lowest interest rate, but psychologically, paying off that smallest one is the fastest way to build momentum to keep paying them off. So that's why Dave Ramsey recommends the lower one, and depending on who I'm talking to, for the most part, I'm going to recommend that too, because I like to see those wins. Don't you like a win? Don't you like a win? I know about math. I did math for 23 years in the Air Force, but don't you like a quick win? Yeah. So with this family, they've got 35,000 on a credit card. They got 200,000 in student loans. They got 100,000 in their 401k. And again, I'm not necessarily going to recommend someone liquidate their 401k, because they're going to have so many penalties that at the end of the day, depending on how old they are, at the end of the day, they could have so many penalties that it eats up 40% of what they have if they're not old enough, or if the structure of that 401k is such that pulling out that money is going to give them a tax hit. All right. And so with the primary income of 95,000, even with your spouse staying at home, taking care of the child, that should be somebody with a $95,000 income and a spouse at home managing the home and being economical with how they manage the home. Someone on that kind of income should be able to pay off that credit card in a year. Now, why do I say it like that? Because I don't want my single moms who are in that situation to feel really bad, because you have trade-offs in life. But when I'm home and I'm taking care of my household, I can economize my meals. I can economize the care of the house. I'm not, when I was chief of protocol for a major command, I wasn't cleaning my house. I was paying somebody else to clean my house. You know what I mean? Like, we're not taking the one free hour I have a week and spending it on cleaning. We're not doing that. We've got to make sure that whatever decisions were being made is based on that. Now, I see a comment here about depends. I think they're talking about the young lady who got out. She was a GS 7 or 9 or something like that. So she wasn't making much, and she didn't have much in her thrift savings plan. So if that was referring to something else, let me know, because I want to make sure I understand the question. But if that was her, yeah. And really, when it comes to the mill to mill, when I became a single mom, a lot of people told me to get out of the military. And there are some things that happened when I was deployed that made me wish that I hadn't been a single military mom, that I had someone I could really trust to take care of my son while I was gone, instead of sending him to live with his father. I mean, there's nothing like being in the desert and your girlfriend emails you, "Hey, I found your son wandering in the mall. His dad left him behind." Like, nobody wants to hear that when you're in the desert, So there are some things that happen where I really wish I hadn't been, but for the most part, the benefits of being in the military were fabulous for me and my son. The medical benefits, the support that the base gave us. As much as I gripe about Barksdale Air Force Base and all the racism and stuff that was there, I will tell you that the support staff there was amazing. The CDC, the Child Care Development Center, the Child Development Center, the youth center. I mean, they were amazing. The coaches, the people that worked with the youth on base, they've been over backwards to help my career succeed. And I have much love for them. And I pray for Mrs. Ward and all those folks that poured into my life and poured into Philip's life ever since I was stationed there the first time and came back the second time. Much, much love. All right. So hopefully she'll give me some more information there. But going back to this one here, I don't like to should all over people. SHOULD. I don't like to use that word a lot. It's just that from what I'm reading here, this is doable. And that's what I want you to understand. It's doable to really economize, really tighten that belt for a year, maybe 18 months, and knock out this 35,000 on a 95,000 income. Now, if you're in an expensive locale like the DC area, let me see if I have an address here. Let me see where these people are from. Pardon me. This is oh yeah, I see where they're at. Okay. So they are in the DMV, but they are halfway between DC and Baltimore. So where they're at, yes, I used to live in I used to live in Brandywine. I have property in Baltimore. They should be able to manage and get out of that debt. And then now it's free. I was looking at somebody's finances the other day, and their living expenses, they're no kidding, actual living expenses like the lights and stuff like that for them as a single person was maybe about $1,025 a month. And the rest of their $6,000 paycheck went to cable, and which some people might consider cable a necessity. I've loosened, getting married, I've loosened over the last 8 years with Chris Conway. I have loosened my stance on cable because I'm very thankful I have a man that will come home and watch TV instead of going out partying at the club. All right, not that I know of too many clubs around here to go party in. We're in rural Texas, but I'm so thankful, right? So I'm like, I've kind of changed my stance on that a little bit, but come on, let's be real. All right. Basic living expenses and food was about 1,025 a month, and the rest of that 6,000, other than the money that went towards the cable, went towards debt every month. And what was worse is this person was paying minimums on everything. And so when I opened up the bills, and I was like, have you seen this box on the back of your bills that says if you only pay the minimum, it's going to take 30 years and you're going to have paid $110,000. But they have another line under that says if you pay $25 extra a month, you're going to pay it off in 3 years and you're going to only pay $7,000. I'm making these numbers up because I don't have their documentation in front of me, but it was like, have you ever looked at that? A lot of us don't look at that. We're like, oh, thank goodness I can afford the minimum payment. Oh, I'm good. Look at that. Look at that box and see how much money you're giving away. That's your future that you're giving away. That's your kids' future that you're giving away. Some of us, we're giving away college educations at an Ivy League school over a nice handbag. Tell me I'm wrong. All right. So there's something that they can do with that. And I would just rinse and repeat paying down those student loans. It's a lot of student loans, but if you can get your living expenses down about 60,000, maybe even 50 from when I see where you're living, you can clean this up. You can clean this up, and 5 years from now, it's not only is this a thing of the past, but now you have the engine running to pay for your house in cash or pay down your house. They don't say if they have a mortgage or if they're renting, but this is really important to know that you can do it. A lot of people feel like, well, I can't do it. I can't do it. Let me tell you a trick that somebody told me when I first came in the Air Force. They said if you don't have any kids and your spouse works, save all of their income. Work on one income and then save the other income. And I was like, oh, that's not realistic. But that's exactly what they did. And I was like, because they lived off of his income and they saved her income. And he was a captain at the time, and she was whatever she made about $25,000 a year. And so in 4 years at one base, they saved up enough to buy a house in cash. Now, that was 25 years ago. All right. So that was not today's dollars, but back then that was enough for them to buy a house in cash. Then they moved to where I met them. The base that I met them at was Langley Air Force Base. And they were at Langley, and they did the same thing. They bought a house, in Suffolk, I think it was. At the time, it was 168,000. I think today it's worth like almost $1 million, right? And so one of the things that we find is just little intentional, consistent details make a difference. She could have said, well, I've got this money and he's got all the bills covered, and I really want to go shopping, and I really want to go do this, and I really want to go do that. And then they would not have achieved their goals, because sometimes we think the goal is so big, we think we can't do it. We think it's not possible. Well, if you don't think it's possible to save up and buy a house in cash, then you won't even sit down and take the time to look at how you can do it. And this couple looked at it and said, hey, I make $75,000 a year 25 years ago, and you make $25,000 a year. We'll live off my income and we'll save all yours, and we'll buy a house. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And by the time she started investing in real estate on her own, She had money to go buy condos, brand new condos on her own. If y'all ever hear my story where I talk about the friend of mine who bought office condos and turned them into executive housing, that's the lady that I'm talking about. And that's how she got the money. And you say, well, I could never do that. I could never do that. Never say never. If you focus so much on what you can't do, you close off your heart and you close off your mind and you close off your energy to the things that you could do. So instead of focusing on what we can't do, instead of focusing on what we don't have, let's look at what we do have, because what we do have is enough to achieve our dreams. If it wasn't enough to achieve your dreams, I like to think that the Lord would be merciful enough to not even allow those dreams to enter your mind. But since you already got those dreams, you already have those hopes, then that tells me you can make it happen. Woo! All right. All right. Let's see. My husband and I are both 63. We want to retire at 65. If we sell our house, we wouldn't have money for a down payment on a condo, which is what we want. Should we sell the house and rent for a year or so to save for a down payment? So this question is kind of confusing to me because it makes me feel like y'all don't have a lot of equity in your house. And so then I'm kind of wondering, from whenever you all decided that you wanted to retire at 65 until this point, that it does not appear that there's been any planning. And so I would really like to know the whole story before giving a detailed kind of answer. But I'm just going to fill in some blanks and I'm going to answer the question with what I have. Okay. So if I know that we have 2 years till we want to retire, then the first question I'm going to ask is, what goes into wanting to retire? Are we in a high stress environment and we're sick and tired of being in this toxic environment and dealing with these toxic people, and and our hair is falling out and our body is shutting down on us and we just need to get out of it, and we're so close to 60, we're 63. It's really hard to find a job at 63. I know people say the ageism isn't legal or anything, but let's be real. It's harder to find a job. It's harder to move from a job at 63 because everybody figures you're going to hit 65 and retire. And I remember the person who told me this, and I was like, well, you're not going to do that. And they were like, I sure am. But they were mad because nobody would hire them because they figured that they would retire when they hit 65. I was like, but you're going to do it. So why are you mad at me? I don't blame them. But you have to be careful about that. Okay. So there's a lot of what can go into we want to retire. And that's really where the meat of the answer is going to go. If it's we want to retire at 65 because our health is failing and we want to just enjoy our life before we have no strength left to give, that's a different conversation than we want to retire at 65 because I'm trying to think of another reason. Because we'll have aged out of the system and it's either retire or get another job. You know what I mean? So there's different reasons for different things. What concerns me here is that if they sell their house, they're not going to have money for a down payment and they want to get a condo. And so I might ask, if you sell your house, if there's no equity, then yes, of course, renting for a year is probably going to be the right answer. But if your house note is equivalent to what your rental is going to be, then you might want to rethink that strategy and just hold on to the house and stock up some savings. And some of you might say, well, what kind of market would have a house that costs less than the rentals? Well, when I was in Bossier City, I was in South Bossier, I had a friend who moved away, offered to sell his house to me or to rent his house to me for $1,000 a month, which I was paying $1,100 in rent. And so it was a really big house, perfect for entertaining. And I was very comfortable with the house. We spent so much time there. And so I said to my landlord, hey, I really like living here, but but I have an opportunity to move somewhere else for $1,000 a month. Can you work with me on the price? And they dropped my rent to $1,000 a month. Yay, JJ, great negotiation. Except 2 months later, they decided they were going to sell the house. And in Louisiana, guess what? If you don't take your rent agreement, your rental contract, if you don't take that and file it down at the courthouse, then guess what? They can sell that house out from under you anytime they want to. So if you are renting in Louisiana, here's your JJ Frugal tip of the day. Make sure you go down to the courthouse and make sure you file your rent agreement so that they cannot sell the house out from you until that agreement is up. All right. The people at the courthouse will tell you how to do that. Wish I'd have known that before I got kicked out of this house. So I get kicked out of this house and I'm trying to find a place to rent. And the houses there were selling in the, high 99s, low hundreds. So it would be maybe, 600. My friend around the corner was paying $600 a month for her mortgage, $600, $700 a month with those interest rates at that time. Whereas the rentals were $1,500, little rinky dink apartments, not even a whole house, little rinky dink apartments. Whole houses, you could rent them. You could rent them for, by now my friend had already sold his house. He had moved away and the cheapest rental I could find was $1,500, $1,700, $2,000. And the ones that were 15 and 17 were way out in Houghton, which was like half an hour from the base, which when you're a single mom, you're not trying to live that far away from the base, because you need your kid to be in the same school as your same base, so the base services can provide care for your kid. I live half an hour away. They can't provide services for my kid anymore. So I was in a real rough spot, and I ended up renting this little tiny 2-bedroom apartment. So it was like half the size of the house I had been renting for the same price. But I remember thinking to myself, in this market, it would have been cheaper for me to buy something than to rent something. Well, why were the rents so high? The rents were so high because a lot of military people got caught in that crash in the market, and their mortgages were so high they couldn't afford to take less. And because all the military people had the mortgages pushed up like this, then all the people with the cheapy homes were pushing their rents up as well. So you could buy the home and have a $600 month payment, but a smart landlord was charging what everybody else was charging, because they knew that all these other people were charging $2,000. So yeah, my house is only worth $600 a month, but I'm gonna charge you $1,200. So those are the kinds of things that you want to take into consideration. And the other thing that I want to bring out to this couple, which again, they didn't give me the kind of information I need to give the best answer that I feel the most comfortable with. But one thing about a condo is you cannot assume that the condo price is what you're paying for your mortgage. It may be what you're paying for your mortgage. So perhaps I said that a little incorrectly, but there are condo fees. So when I had a situation where the landlord was selling his house, now granted, he was in Virginia, waited to the end of the lease, so I knew I had time to find. But of course, I'm pregnant, so I want to find a house now, right? Like, I don't want to do all this looking around to find the best deal. I just want to get something that's going to work so I can give this baby birth and be good to go, right? And so I find, as a realtor, I find this wonderful little condo, and it's like I'm not going to have to do any maintenance, and it's in a nice area of town, not far from where I live, access to all, right there at the landmark mixing bowl. I'm like, yes, this is going to be great. Until I find out that the condo fees are $900 a month. To buy the condo was $180,000. So my payment was going to be like $1,200 a month instead of the $2,700 a month I was renting for in DC, right? I mean, in Northern Virginia. So I'm all excited, right? But then you tack on a $900 a month condo fee. And a lot of the condos in Northern Virginia are like that. They're fairly low to buy them, but boy, those condo fees, man, that's where they get you. That's where they get you. So you want to be aware of that, and you want to factor that in. And if it's going to take you too long to save, then there's a couple things that we look at. We look at how can we increase your savings? How can we increase your income? And how can we adjust the goal so that all of the goals are aligned? Because if the goal is to retire at 65 is the most important goal, but the condo and the acquisition of the condo in the area you want isn't working with that goal of retiring at 65, then we either adjust the goal for 65, or we adjust the desire for the condo, or we do a stepping stone, or we use some creative real estate strategies. And creative real estate strategies work for all types of real estate, subject to, and all those other creative ways that I teach in our Third Thursday classes. They work for all kinds of real estates, even condos. All right. Well, let me see if I can do one more or two more questions. Let me check the Ask JJC form and see if any new questions have come in since I compiled this list. All right, I don't see any new questions there. And let me check the chat. I don't see any chat. Okay. All right. So now let's see what's next on the list here. I hope y'all are enjoying this. I would love to get some feedback because I know my sound was out earlier later. I mean, my sound was out earlier. So I want to make sure you all are actually listening. It always makes me feel a little awkward when I don't see any new hearts, likes, loves, or even comments come through the StreamYard. Okay, let's see. Yeah. Ah. Oh, all right. So this person found out the hard way that when you short sale a house, like any other type of debt forgiveness, when you short sale a house, the company has the right. They don't usually, no, I shouldn't say don't usually. They don't always do this, but they have the right to report your forgiveness to the IRS as your income. So if this is, if you're a landlord, okay, so this is gonna apply to two people. That what I'm about to say is gonna apply to two people. If you are a landlord and you have a client on vouchers and they skip out on you, well, you can remind them that you can send the forgiveness of the amount to the IRS as their income, which is likely going to put them with all the fees and other things that you add on as a landlord when people skip out on you and all the repairs that have to be made because people who skip out usually aren't taking care of the property. You can report all that to the IRS, and it's very, very, very likely that you're reporting that to the IRS is going to escalate them above the cut line to receive benefits. So you send them that in a very nicely worded letter, and you prove it with facts and figures and actual websites and graphics and things like that prove it. And you make sure that they know this is what you're going to do. And 9 times out of 10, they will find the way to get you the money that they owe you because they do not want to lose their benefits. Forward that to the flip side. If you are somebody who is receiving benefits and you are not paying the portion that you're supposed to pay, you need to get that fixed ASAP, or you need to drop on down to another place. I know I'm saying you need a lot, and that's not very nice. I recommend, how about this? I invite you to go find you a cheaper place to live, because even on a voucher, it's very easy for us to sometimes overextend ourselves. And if you don't, you run the risk of said landlord following the advice that I just gave to landlords. And we are not trying to hurt each other. I want to help you elevate your life. So I'm giving you this tip. You take action before some kind of action overtakes you. All right. So in this case, they short sold the house. It was about $65,000 upside down on the house. Good for them. They were able to get out from underneath that weight and move on with their lives, except that it came back to bite them when it was reported to the IRS as income. So now they owe the taxes on that. They took out money from their 401k to help buy the next house, and now they are struggling to catch everything up. And this is why I recommend that we avoid doing that domino effect of robbing Peter to pay Paul. See, the first time you feel like you got to go into your 401k, that's a red flag. I know. They say you can use this to help buy a house and it's a loan you can pay back. But think about it. Think about the math here. If you can't save up the $50,000 in the time frame you got to pay that back, what is it, 3 years now, a year, 3 years, I don't remember what it is, but if you can't save up the $50,000 in the time frame that you got to pay it back, then you aren't going to pay it back. And if you could save up the $50,000 in the time frame that you're going to pay it back, then you could just do that. You don't need to take a loan from yourself. I hope I'm making sense tonight, because I feel like I'm agitated, and I don't want to be agitated. I want to help. But we don't think about the long term of this. It's like, oh, I'm gonna pull this money from over here so I can do this thing over there. But the reality is you don't have the money to do it. And even though the money's there, and here's what we do is we think, well, I'm just going to do this and it's going to work out. I'm going to do this and I'm going to make more money. I'm going to do this and I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to do this and I'm going to win the lottery. Oh my goodness, y'all. I cannot believe how many people have come to me and their no kidding retirement plan was, I'm going to win the lottery. Or here's the one that's more common. This is the one that's more common because I primarily educate women on how to manage money. I educate everybody, but I primarily educate women on how to manage money. And so the one that I get the most common is, well, I'm going to get married and my husband's going to take care of all that. And I'm like, wait, no. I mean, I don't ever want to put on anybody that you ain't gonna get married, because a lot of people will, but a husband is not a retirement plan, especially if you're not a good picker. Oh goodness, oh Lord, help us. Okay, so we have to think through these things, and we have to understand that some of these products and some of these situations and some of these allowances and some of these programs, they are not designed to help you. They are actually designed because they already know you can't pay it. And have you ever looked up what happens when you don't pay it? Guess who makes money? Not you. There are a lot of people all along the chain that make a lot of money off of you not being able to pay your bills. It's the same thing with welfare. A lot of people with means, they gripe about welfare. But if you ever stop and think about it, the reason welfare persists is because there's a lot of rich people who get richer off of welfare. Every time you swipe that card, every time you access this product, every time you file this paperwork, people are making money off your poverty. And the only person that's going to do something about that is you. The only person that's going to pull you up out of that is you. That's why I teach what I teach. Oh, and I hope that this person will be able to do what they need to do to make things work. The one thing about this question that gives me a lot of hope for this couple is that the person who wrote it is a stay-at-home mom / realtor. So they probably do their real estate while the kids are at school or when the husband's home to watch the kids. But for both of these individuals, and I know the zip code that they're living in, for both of these individuals, they should be making more money. There I go, shooting on somebody again, SHOULD, all over these poor people. They don't even know me. They just submitted a question, and I'm just telling them that they should be making more money. They should be making more money. They should be making more money. They should not be making what they're giving me. Their husband makes $34,000 a month, and the wife makes about $30,000 a year off a realtor. A realtor near a high metro area, there are a lot of strategies that you can use to increase your realtor commissions and to increase your realtor close rate. Okay, and so I love this. Y'all. A husband is not a good retirement plan. Oh man. All right. So as of somebody who was a realtor for 10 years, first with Long and Foster and then with Keller Williams, there's a lot of things that you can do. There's no reason that anybody as near to metropolitan large area as this couple should be making that little money in real estate. There's no reason for that. Now, maybe the husband works in a local job, and maybe that local city is kind of out there a little ways. And so, that's the trade-off. When you're in the big city, it costs big money. And so you make big money, but it costs big money. And when you're out in the rural parts, it costs less money, but the jobs make less money, right? It's a trade-off. But if you are a realtor, then you have the ability to join the board of realtors in the places that have the money, that are adjacent to the county you're in or the parish you're in. All right. And so you can do that, and you can work real estate. You might live out an hour away, and that's not always recognized. That's not always recommended, right? It's not always recommended to work an hour away. But if you need to make money and you live in Podunkville, and there's a big, huge, whopping metropolitan area where the median house price is like $700,000, well, then I am schlepping it over to the big old metropolitan area. I am joining that board of realtors as well. And if it's across state lines or across district lines, I'm going to do reciprocation or whatever it takes. I'm going to get that license, and I'm going to make me some money. And real estate is a numbers game. Being a real estate agent is a numbers game. It's a checklist game. And I was taught by one of the top realtors in the DMV, the DC, Maryland, Virginia, that whole area. I was taught by one of the top realtors, and our listings were 7%. The standard realtor listing is 6%, but our listings were 7%. And we earned every bit of that listing. We would do a lot of behind the scenes work, negotiating with the bank, making deals between the banks and the trades, and all the things that have to happen behind the scenes for a deal to actually go through and for a client to actually sell their house and the other client to get qualified for the house. Like, we did a lot of work, but we charged appropriately, and we followed the numbers. See, real estate agent is you got to get clients, and then you got to deliver. The delivery is the checklist. You got a good checklist. It's read a step, do a step, get a banana. Most military people, we know how to run a checklist, right? But the customer acquisition side, to get listings, that's smiling and dialing. That is phone call, phone call, phone call. That's knowing that if I call 10 people, I'm going to get one appointment. And for every 10 appointments, 3 are going to actually show. And for every 3 appointments, one of them is going to sign an engagement letter. And for every 3 engagement letters, one of them is going to get a contract. And for every contract, one of them is going to close. And I'm going to have my payday. And you walk those numbers back to how much money you need to make a month. And that's how much you're going to be smiling and dialing. And some of us have big needs and some of us have little needs. I didn't have that big of a need. Almost all my business was referral business after the first couple of deals, because I didn't have the time. As I progressed in my military career, I didn't have the time. When you got meetings at the White House, you're not trying to sell somebody's house anymore. But I love the fact that I could do it, because my realtor paycheck, which is one rinky-dink little townhome, my very first realtor paycheck, y'all. I'm going to tell you this story. My very first realtor paycheck, a little tiny town home outside Andrews Air Force Base. That realtor paycheck from that one little commission, I had to split it with Long and Foster, and then I had to split it again with the mentor who helped me walk through that deal, was equivalent to my paycheck as a major in the DC area, with all my locality pay and all the extra money they give you because you living in a high area. I told y'all the second time around how expensive my daycare and stuff was, and my rent. $2,600 a month for daycare. The first house I was in was $2,700 a month. And I was like, well, I can't afford daycare and afford to live here. So we dropped down to an $1,800 a month townhome. And I'll tell you, they paid us extra to live there. But when I had that first deal, and I made the same money with that little townhome after all those splits and paying all those people, and I made the same money with the townhome as my military paycheck, that's the day when I knew I had financial security. I didn't have to make my money. I didn't have to stay in the Air Force and tolerate that to make my money. I had a choice in how I could make my money. I had financial flexibility to work here or work there or do whatever I want to do. And that was the day that I made up my mind. I was staying in the Air Force as long as it was still fun. And when it stopped being fun, that's when I decided to retire. All right. So for this couple, I would hope that you'll reach out to me, because we can sit down. And look, I'm not going to give all my secrets on a free call, right? I'm just not going to do that. But we can sit down and we can go and workshop how you can elevate your business, because this debt that you have, you can clean this up with a good, solid real estate practice, some good, solid checklists. I can dust off my old checklist. I can put you in contact with a top performer in your area that can mentor you and help you do better. Because at the end of the day, if you want to be more, if you want to have more, then you got to do more. And it's time for us to pull ourselves up and do what we got to do so we can get where we want to be in 2023. Oh man, I wish I could remember what I just said. I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that, because that rhymed. That sounded good. All right, let me see if I can do another question. Oh. These next 2 questions are so sad. They're so sad. One is a couple that's remarried, filed bankruptcy, military veteran, don't have much money. Wife blames the husband for their money struggles. I really wish I knew what to say on this. Did they provide me any contact information? Oh man. Well, whoever you are, I hope you'll reach out to me. You know, when one person's blaming the other for finances, we have to look at why. It could be that you're bad with money, right? It could be. I'm not going to pretend that it couldn't be. It could be that they're bad with money and that they just don't want to admit it. So it's easier to blame you than to accept it for themselves. Like I get like that a lot. Say what? Yeah, I do. And I know, and for me it's a red flag. For me it's actually a red flag. When I start getting irritated with my husband as far as things that he's buying and I feel like some of that money should be spent on me. I have to check myself. Like it's an actual red flag for me. I have to check myself like, okay, I'm being real irritable and this man takes good care of me and my boys. So why am I being irritable about something that's not really something? And usually what it is it is something. It's just not something that really has anything to do with the money he's spending. Excuse me. It has to do with either I don't feel like I'm getting enough time, or I don't feel like I'm getting enough self-expression, or I don't feel like I'm getting enough something other than the money. It's usually something other than the money. So I do hope that someone will reach out to me. But if you and your spouse are not on the same page with money, it can be really difficult to get ahead with money, especially if one person's spending it as fast as the other can make it, or especially if one person's resenting the other's attempts to clean up money, especially if they've been a mess in the past and now you're trying to tell me I need to get all my money stuff together and we're going to do this self-righteous thing. That can really strain a marriage. And we have to remember that sometimes our past behavior has taught our spouse that they can't trust us. Sometimes our past behavior has taught us that we can't trust us. Like, how many of us ever say, I'm going to wake up early in the morning and go work out? And then the alarm goes off. And what do? Snooze, roll over, go back to bed. We have trained ourselves that we cannot trust ourselves because we don't do what we tell ourselves we're going to do. And one of the hardest people to lead is ourselves. And if we have been the kind of person that has made mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake, then we have to understand that the tolerance, the trust, the patience of our spouse is rebuilt on their timetable, not our timetable. And so the biggest thing we can do when it comes to money is really keeping our side of the street clean. And so it gets a little sticky when we have issues with marriages and one person not cooperating. But generally speaking, if one person keeps their side of the street clean and abides by sound financial principles and starts to address the underlying problem that the spouse is experiencing, then they will be able to turn things around. And whether or not that spouse ever comes around with money, they can at least have peace and lay their head down at night and sleep peacefully. It all starts with coming up with a plan. And before you can make a plan to get where you want to go, you got to know for sure where you're at. And that means being honest with yourself about where you're at and why you're there. The next one is somebody who got a payday loan and they say they can't get caught up. I think we're going to stop there for today. Let me put here stopped here in 2023. Okay. So I remember where I stopped on this list. And again, if you have a question that you want to ask for next time, or if you have a question you want to ask today, go ahead and drop it in the comments. If you are listening to this in the podcast and you're not on live with us, you can, or if you just want to be anonymous, you can go to askjjc.com. There'll be a voice number there for you to call in and leave a voicemail with your question, or you can fill out a short anonymous form. Yes, I changed the form to make it shorter, y'all, so that we can encourage more people to fill it out like they used to. All right, but this person got on a payday loan cycle and they can't seem to figure out how to get themselves out of this payday loan cycle. So this person, let me say that again. This person got themselves caught up in a payday loan cycle and they can't seem to get caught up with their life. They got caught in, but they can't get out. And so that's how these things really work. And it really is designed to keep you trapped in a cycle of poverty. And that's why it's so important to do everything in your power to live within your means, to live on less than you make. If that means that you are doing like I did one time, I remember this series of time where me and my son would go around to all the different grocery stores and we would hit all the free samples, and that was our meal. And I remember other times where I didn't have internet. I think I told people about that at the beginning. I don't know if that was where the sound cut off or the sound didn't cut off, but I'm going to tell the story again for those who just jumped in. I remember the times when I used to sit outside Panera Bread. I used to sit outside Starbucks. I used to sit outside Whataburger. When I was in Shreveport Community Church had the Kid City, and it had free Wi-Fi and a big old playscape. And we would sit there, and my little boy, he would climb around the playscape, and then I would work on something. Was writing books, or I was trying to take classes, or I was doing anything I could to better myself and make some more money and pay off debt without spending too much more money and going into debt. If there are things like that we can make that sacrifice and get out of that payday loan cycle, because it really is like a roach motel. Once you get in, it is very hard to get out. It's going to require some intentionality. It's going to require some creativity. And it's going to require some stick-to-itiveness. Anyone remember that word from back in the day? You got to have the gumption to fight for your future. And I want to encourage you to fight for your future. I want to encourage you to fight for your future. I know it is not easy. If it was easy, everybody would do it. You know what's easy is going to the payday loan and figuring you'll take care of it next month. But then next month you're short because you got to pay this payday loan. So you go get another payday loan, and those interests and those fees and everything keeps adding up and up and up and up and eating away at what little you have. And you don't have enough to keep letting somebody else take away what you have. You got to keep it all for yourself. And that means tightening that belt. But let me encourage you with something that happens when you make up your mind, I am not going into any more debt. When you make up your mind that you are not going into any more debt, the doors begin to come open. They come open in unexpected ways and at unexpected times, but the needs are always met. The wants may not always be met in that initial phase, but the needs are always met. My child never went hungry. Now he may not have ate what he wanted to eat. He may not have ate what I wanted to feed him, but my child never went hungry. My child never went out of clothes. Now there might have been a time or two where he had a hole in the bottom of his shoe, and I cut out some cardboard and put that down as an insole until I could get to the next paycheck and go buy him some new shoes. But my baby never went to school with no shoes. Whatever it is that you need to do, it will be provided to you when you make up your mind to fight for your future by spending less than you make and paying down this debt, and by refusing to take another one of those payday loans. I promise you it'll happen. And when it does, I want you to write back, email back, call back, leave me a message, and let me know how amazing of a miracle the Lord worked in your life because you dared to fight for your future instead of giving up your hands and saying it's too woe is me. And speaking of fighting for your future, I want to encourage you today to fight for your future with me. I want to encourage you today to fight for economic empowerment in your communities. All right. So you see a link at the bottom there. It's jjclink.com/war. And when you type that link, you're going to get this very nice little page that is not showing up. All right, hold on. I thought I have to stop the other screen first. That's why. Okay. Share screen. All right. All right. When you type in jjclink/war, you're going to get this page. It is the fight for economically empowered communities. You might wonder why I'm saying the fight for economically empowered communities rather than saying the fight against poverty. Well, because it's interesting, the word choice, when we're fighting for somebody, for something, or we're marching for something, or we're working for something, it's a different kind of energy than when we're doing against. Against is that negativity, and we don't want to introduce that. I got that concept from Mother Teresa, y'all. And she said one time they asked her to march in a rally against war. And you know what she told them? She said, I'm not going to march in a rally against war, but I will march in a rally for peace. So that's why it's war. I'm declaring war on economic poverty, right? I'm declaring war on generational poverty, but we are fighting for economically empowered communities. And here you'll find different ways that you can get involved, whether you want to learn, whether you want to lift others, or whether you want to lead others. I'm going to be offering in the very near future a certification program that allows you to take some of my proprietary content and be able to teach it to the people in your church, in your family, in your home, what have you, and even be able to charge for it depending on the level at which that you join into the program. And if you want to be part of the first cadre that does that program to help others, that takes my work and uses to help others, then I want you to go right now to jjclink.com/war and sign up to join my fight for economically empowered communities. You can do that at jjclink.com/war. And you can either choose to learn, which is where you can take the boot camp for free. You can choose to lift others, which is where you can facilitate a workshop where I teach it, but you're facilitated it. Or you can choose to lead, where you can buy the actual license to take my words, take my writing, take my workbook, slap your name and your picture on there, and teach it to your people as if it was your own content. Ooh, yeah, I got my business started buying licensed content from other individuals, and I am so excited that in 2023, we're going to be offering this content for you to teach my content and for you to spread the word. See, I can do that, not because I have this ego or anything like that, but I can do that because there's too many people out there that need help for me to try to hoard all the help for myself. So if you come alongside me and we're fighting for economically empowered communities together, well, then together we can make a bigger change. Together we can make a bigger ripple. Together we can make more people empowered. Together we can help more people break free of economic bondage. Together we can help more people elevate their lives and achieve their goals. You know, there's so many people out there that talk about money about this and money about that, and they get so frustrated when I say, don't take a loan for that car, don't take a loan for that rent home, don't take a loan for this, don't take a loan for that. But then later on, now they know enough to not come back to me whining about it anymore. You know, I don't get friends who do that. Though I do have one or two friends will be like, please don't JJ me on this. I know I shouldn't have done it, right? But they come back and I hear them talking to other people about how this renter put a hole in the wall and they don't have the money to fix it. And now the mortgage is due and they can't find a renter. Well, if you wouldn't have bought the house with debt, if you couldn't find a renter, you would be okay. Ooh, I'm going to stop now before I get all stirred up. I hear that Mr. Man has come home from judging his basketball. And unless I have any questions, I am not going to take time away from Mr. Man. So with that, I want to thank you all for being on with us today. Again, if you're listening to this as part of the Building Wealth Together podcast, I encourage you to join us live every Thursday night, 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. We have different themes for each Thursday, but we will be here and answer every question that you submit in the system at askjjc.com or in the comments while we're live. All right, y'all. That's all I've got for you today. Y'all take care and be blessed.